All right, Peter, thank you very much. For more on the House vote and the contents of President Obama's stimulus plan, I'm joined by Democratic Representative Joe Sestak of Pennsylvania and Republican Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana. Good morning. Thank you very much for being here. Congressman Scalise, let me start with you. President Obama visited Congress just 2 days ago in hopes that he would get some bipartisan support here. You, in fact, said coming out of the meeting that it was a productive meeting, and yet not one Republican voted on behalf of the stimulus package yesterday. What happened?
Well, good morning, Alexis. And what happened was we had a good, productive meeting. A lot of us on the Republican side expressed our concerns to the president about the massive spending in the bill that many people feel won't do anything to stimulate the economy. And we laid out a number of alternatives that we had provided to do things on the area of tax cuts for middle-class families and small businesses to actually go and address the problem of getting people back to work. Unfortunately, they didn't incorporate any of those ideas into their plan, and I think you saw not only did all Republicans vote against the bill, but in a bipartisan vote, you even had a number of conservative Democrats that could not stomach some of this really liberal spending that was in this massive bill.
Yeah, I mean, Congressman Sestak, I believe the number was that 11 Democrats went over and voted against it. You voted for it. What is it about this package that you think will effectively re-stimulate the U.S. economy?
Well, first is, this may not have been an A+, but it's certainly an A package. If we do nothing, we know we get an F, because by June we'll lose 2.7 million jobs. In fact, doing nothing means GDP drops 6.4%. But I think what's important is the tone has changed. And so I would readily agree with the Republicans. Let's add some more taxes in. This is a package that's not just for boosting the economy. It's also for quick relief. Now, if we do a more AMT tax, or let's say have a payroll holiday, we know for every dollar we'll give back in tax relief, we only get about 40 cents into GDP. But it gives relief to families and businesses that are under strain. We know, for example, that this is the first recession that's not just in one or two sectors like automobiles or housing. It's actually in education and health. It's the first one since the Great Depression hit all the sectors. That's why this bill is important, to also help stop hemorrhaging the jobs where payrolls and programs are being cut by states. So I would agree that as this goes to the states, in order to get it through quickly, let's keep those types of investments that help health services from laying off workers, but let's also add some taxes if that's what's needed to get this bill through, because promptness and quickness, with the markets have already built in the expectation that government will do the right thing and intervene, is absolutely the right thing to do to get it through.
You know, Congressman Scalise, I want to go back to you for a moment, because I know you and the Republican members of Congress created an alternative plan. It was called Economic Recovery and Middle Class Tax Relief, the Act of 2009. You're calling it H.R. 470. When you look at the list of things that you would like to see happen in this stimulus package, point out to me the three most crucial things and why they're missing from the package that was signed off on yesterday.
Well, I think the main components of our bill dealt with tax cuts for middle-class families and small businesses, specifically going into the income tax rates, lowering income tax rates at the bottom, which helps all families in this country. Also looking at capital gains taxes, injecting real capital, money that's sitting on the sidelines, to be pumped back into the economy so that small businesses can actually go and create jobs. One of the things we talked to the president about was the concern, even on his tax package, he's not really cutting taxes as much as he's creating a new welfare program by cutting checks to people that don't pay any income taxes. We don't call that tax cuts. That's really welfare. We need to get away from that mentality and the bailouts that were in the bill where literally they're giving billions of dollars to states, many of whom are already addressing their own problems, just like families are. We need to inject money into the economy by creating good jobs, and we need to get this right. We can't just spend trillions of dollars of new money that's really debt that our children and grandchildren are going to inherit on a bill that's not going to work. A lot of economists have even pointed out, in the CBO pointed out, more than half of this money wouldn't even be spent in the next 2 years, so it won't stimulate the economy as much as it will help government grow what's already too big of a bureaucracy.
Congressman Sestak, let me go back to you on this, because I'm looking at the list of things in here, and I know the bill is a lot thicker than the piece of paper that I'm holding, but on a line-item basis, let's be perfectly honest, there is a lot of pork in here. And I thought this president said he's not going to stand for pork, that this plan was going to be a very defined plan about creating jobs, creating infrastructure. And you look at this list here, and it's kind of staggering. How do you respond to that?
Oh, Alexis, I have to politely disagree. As you know, everything here that is given out, let's take Medicaid. We are giving $90 billion to the states for Medicaid. Why? Well, it's because a hospital in my district, Crozier, has laid off and is consolidating positions for 400 people because the states no longer, because unemployment is so vast, has revenues to pay its Medicare share. In fact, those who are being laid off are from employer-based plans are now having to pay 100% of COBRA. And Alexis, you know how expensive that is. So this bill is going to say we're going to give $90 billion to Medicaid and pay 65% of COBRA so that the hospital won't lay off workers. This is about stopping jobs. If you could give me a specific example that is of pork, I would be glad to address it. But this is not about welfare. This is about stopping unemployment going to over 11.5% by the end of this year. So according to Moody's macroeconomic model, if we do nothing, and 11% marks the beginning of a Great Depression. Let me step back also. When you look, and I can't be an ideologue, I must be practical. When you look into that model, what it says is $1.73 increase in GDP is given to this economy in a boost by every dollar put into a food stamp or unemployment insurance. Now, that's because they'll spend it. Now, I'd want to give more taxes, but the reality is you get $1.01 increase in GDP for every dollar back in income tax. I'm willing to compromise, but ideology has to be set aside. And Alexis, pork, I think we have to sit back and say education. We put $13 billion in for IDEA, special education. Why? I met with all the school districts, superintendents in my district, and they said we're laying off special ed teachers and janitors. We got to stop the hemorrhaging so that people still work and get revenue so we don't have more budget outlays and a bigger deficit. Practical compromise is what's needed right now, actually.
All right. Well, Congressman Sestak, some great points. Both men, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me this morning to talk about it. I know we'll be talking a lot more about it in the coming weeks. I appreciate you joining
Enjoy
us.
Switzerland.
Now let's go over to Connell McShane in New York and check in with some more breaking news. All right, I will. Connell?
All right. Thank you, Alexis. The breaking news is all the earnings, of course. So let's take a moment here to